What's up, nerds, and welcome back to a Patreon exclusive episode of the That Nerdy Site Show. I'm your host, Frank Bazzani, and today I'm joined by Jazz Foster. How are you doing, Jazz?
I am doing okay. I'm real tired. Work started up again, and I'm just physically exhausted.
No, yeah, we were talking about that a little bit beforehand, and it's definitely good news, but I completely understand. Like, I mean, that's also especially the kind of thing that just would make you, like, super exhausted, especially just kind of jumping out of quarantine, like, right back into that.
Happy to be working again, though, man. Out of the house is pretty nice.
Definitely, definitely. I can imagine. Like, it's been too long since I left. I did just open before this. I opened my last beer though, so I'm probably gonna have to leave soon.
Nice. Yeah. I have enough gin to get by for now, so that's what I've been drinking lately.
You're like, I'm good for tonight until tomorrow.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
That's what I always kind of. It's like the until or the I'm good for right now is like always a pretty loose time frame for me. It's just like it's like a day or two maybe, you know.
Uh huh. Yep.
Um, and so in this case, I wanted to do kind of like another fireside chat with you after our last episode a couple weeks ago, I guess now. In that episode, we just kind of got talking about some older TV shows, and I mean that's definitely something I think we've talked about before too. We kind of sometimes hit on those same veins of just like weird old things we've seen.
Sure. Yeah.
I was just kind of curious though, because there was one I thought of, and I was like, how did I not think to mention this last time? And then I just fell down like a rabbit hole in my own brain, like some stupid Wikipedia, where I thought of like 50 more shows.
Okay.
Not quite 50, but I actually did write a couple down here. I was just kind of curious about.
Awesome. Yeah.
So the one that kind of spurred everything off for me, I hope you have some kind of connection for this, but if you don't, I definitely understand. But in the day, this was considered like prime time TV for my family, and we watched this like every week.
Oh man, no pressure. Okay.
No, but I was definitely wondering, did you ever watch Las Vegas
Like
with,
CSI Las Vegas?
but like Las Vegas with like Josh Duhamel, where he was like working in the casino, and it was
What?
you've never heard of this?
No, but I do like Josh Duhamel, especially the Josh Duhamel of 15 years ago. So
Yeah, because this is like pre-Transformers, like
James
the
Caan? Oh my God.
and yeah, yeah. Oh, did you look it up? Because you just blew
Yeah,
my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
James Caan's in that, and I totally forgot because he like owns the casino.
Oh.
Basically, Josh Duhamel's like a guy who has to monitor and run the casino, and every episode there's always like multiple stories going on, but it's always like there's some crazy shit like a murder or some kind of just insane thing. And then there will be like side stories where it's like, oh, this rapper's here and he's got all the drugs in this room. Like it's just a bunch of like s- stories that weave together in a really weird way because of all the people who are like in this hotel casino in Vegas.
Sure, yeah.
And it's all basically just like
Huh.
high rollers. Um, if you haven't seen it, it's just totally understandable. This is one thing I can't say if this ever stands up. I have not seen this since it was like airing new. But like I said, this was like great TV. Like this is something everyone in my family was like all about. And then I remember watching it all the time because most of these shows I was or that they were into, especially the ones, even some of the other ones I wrote down, I was like not into.
Yeah.
But this is one of the ones where I was like, this is great TV, and Josh Duhamel's great.
Yeah, this is an all-star cast, first of all. It looks like Tom Selleck is in the latest season, at least the latest season. Um, that is wild. No, I never watched it. It looks like it aired on NBC, which was not really my family's like heyday, so to
Hmm.
speak. So it slipped me by, but it looks awesome. Like I said, the cast is stacked, so.
I definitely remember it being really good, and just kind of because in my head it's not as good as like an Ocean's 11, but it has that like kind of flavor where it's cutting between like a bunch of different scenes with a bunch of different people who are all doing things, but it all
Mhm.
kind of it adds up to the same place, or even the
Sure.
things that you didn't think were connected, like all kind of slammed together in a weird way, and and then there's a bunch of just like comedy injected in as well.
I dig that. Las Vegas is also a great setting for any like even mystery adjacent show. And I think CSI, like the OG CSI, proved that pretty well. Just because there's so much diversity in that location, because it is such a bizarre place where you can get a lot of different people uh, and a lot of wild stories. So it's definitely a captivating premise. Like I would watch it were it on a streaming service.
Yeah, because it's like from what I remember, it's always about like because there's so many like high rollers that come through every week, and it's just like these people who work there and their jobs and just all the shit that like he has to try to deal with and put out all these fires.
Yeah.
But it's like you have so much like variety there. Like it was way more entertaining and different than just like a Law and Order for me at least.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, I don't know, I'm sure that's at least partially true in Vegas in real life.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is probably based off some guys like memoirs or something.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Have you ever been to Vegas, Frank?
Yeah, yeah. I've been twice now, I think, but I always had a great time. Have you ever been?
Once. It was something.
Too wild.
I was there for a wedding, which was great. It was a beautiful wedding, planned, not like a shotgun kind of thing.
That's good.
And it just got, yeah, exactly. Um, it just got real drunk and real wild, and like, Vegas is one of the few places where you can just open carry, which
Hmm.
was bad. But it just, I do remember we broke into the Caesar's Palace pool,
Fuck
um,
yeah.
because it was February, so the pool was closed, and we were wandering around Caesar's Palace, and like, some like manager kind of showed up, and we started running away, and found ourselves in this weird staircase, and all of a sudden we were at the pool, and just wasted. Uh, so it was an experience. I went, and given time, I would go back, but I'm maybe Vegas out right now.
Oh, that's totally understandable because I think you know you almost need like some breathing room, especially if you go crazy. But I think it's like a fun time, and I guess it's maybe is one of those places where you just go like, well, I guess that's what they always say is like, what does it say? It's always whatever happens stays in Vegas or whatever because you're just like this
Uh huh.
isn't real, like this is just a pretend place.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yep.
because when I was there, we got those like margaritas that you can drink out of those giant cups, and we got like the
Oh,
100
sure.
ounce one.
Ugh,
It was the
that's
biggest one you.
so much.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because it's also just sugar, like just so much.
Mhm.
And we got the one that was like two shots mixed together, and I think it was like 151 and something else. And
And it was 100 ounces.
yeah, yeah, it was 100 ounces. And so this is what, because
That
this
is
is
12 pints of beer.
what's the this
No,
is
divide that by two. 8. Still a lot.
because this is the best part though is like they give you like a thing where you can carry it around your neck. But
Hell yeah.
I put it on the ground, and like I mean I'm a tall guy because I'm like 6'4", and it comes up to like my knee like from the ground,
Jesus.
and then the bottom is just a giant like circle base, and that's where all the alcohol like collects in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I split it with someone else, and we were going back and forth, and then they got super messed up, and then I just drank the rest of it, and then I was definitely messed
Oh,
up, and we were just
yeah.
walking around on the strip.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to do it, as far as I could tell. Is just kind of wander around.
I mean, it was nighttime, so you know.
Exactly.
Then I forget. There's definitely a lot of other wild things that happened, but that's where it started, and it's funny that it gets fuzzier after that, if you can believe.
Yeah. How about that? I think I remember pretty much all of my Vegas trip, which is sort of impressive. I was a real functioning drunk on that, not weekend, because they got married on a Tuesday. Love
Oh,
them, but woof.
that's rough.
It was like Tuesday at 2.
Oh,
And I knew the only people I knew were the friend that I brought, and then like one other person in the bride. I didn't even know the groom. I was like, man, like, Lo, I love you to death, and that's why I'm here, but I don't know anybody, and that's why I was that drunk. So
I mean, that's a
Vegas
good way to
weddings.
get through it.
Mm,
It's just especially if it's open bar.
it did the job, certainly.
So, I mean, that definitely it makes sense if you haven't seen that one, and I figured that could happen with most of these. But what's funny that you say that you weren't really on the NBC side. I did remember I was like, I think this was on NBC. I've definitely covered all the networks with at least one show, so we're gonna figure out whatever the main network was. If it was one of the main networks, if actually I have one that wasn't one of the main networks either.
Okay. Are you asking what my main network is? Because I could tell you.
So that's yeah, like for you, and I guess if you kind of had one with like your family growing up, I guess I
Mm.
want to go through a couple more and see if we can find it. But if we don't, I definitely want to hear what it is.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
At this
Lay 'em on
point,
me.
it's definitely like a game.
Okay. Okay. Not NBC. We've ruled it out. So let's go. Let's see.
So this is one I'm assuming is probably most likely, so I don't know if we should go to it next, but I am just gonna go to it.
Hmm.
Do you remember or have you ever seen the CBS show Medium?
I have, but it's not something I watched with my family. That was something that I watched a little bit of. It was my best friend's, like her and her family watched the show. So I watched a few episodes with her and then kind of went back to it a few years ago. I enjoyed it.
Because it is kind of like a unique take on like a murder solving, like whatever you call those like freak of the week kind of things where they're just trying to catch
Sure.
somebody like every week.
Hmm.
Because I mean, I watched this a lot because this my mom loved the show. This was just one that like she loved, and I remember watching it a lot, and I only remember like one thing about it, and it's basically just that yeah, like she was a medium and she just used that to help them solve crimes because she would just have like
Yep.
visions.
There was a little bit of a niche. When did Medium run? 26.
This is like yeah, the early 2000s because it must have been canceled by like 2010 at least.
2011, according to IMDb. There was a niche around that time because Ghost Whisperer overlaps that almost exactly. And that was another one that I kind of like saw with a friend and then went back to. But that's a similar concept, and they're like talking to ghosts.
I never watched Ghost Whisperer. Like what so yeah, it was pretty much the same thing though, like the ghost just kind of gives them like the lowdown on what happened with like the murder.
Uh, yes, yeah. Ghost Whisperer is like a girl who can talk to ghosts. Um, and there's like there's no real like police in it. So it's rarely like solving the murder or whatever. It's mostly like ghosts find her and they're like, I can't leave this, I can't ascend to whatever until my last wish is fulfilled or whatever, and then she has to go and find like the old dead veteran's kid and be like, he loved you, and then the ghost can go to heaven or something. I don't know. Um, so there's not too much in the way of like there's no cop character. I think there's a medic, but it is similar to Medium in that it's just like the ghost comes and they're like, help me, and then they do it.
That makes sense, I guess, and I guess it is more even of like a more of a unique take than like they're not even just trying to like solve a murder or like a mystery. It is kind of this other thing of like trying to resolve, issues to help like the spirit move on.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, obviously, like you're trying to solve the problem. There are mysteries involved, and there are like overarching plot lines that are like mysteries. But on the whole, I would say it's not. It's cop show adjacent. Yeah.
Definitely like in the same vein.
Yeah, yeah, and it is similar to Medium. I think, just sort of a different take on it.
And so, I mean, yeah, I guess I felt like with how much I had seen that show, I should remember much more, but I'm like not even kidding when I say like that's basically it. Um, and obviously not like you've seen it and you're familiar with that, but is CBS like the network, is that the one that like hits home?
No, I wouldn't say it is. Oops.
Because
No,
Survivor almost led me to believe that.
I am into Survivor, but I didn't ever watch Survivor with my family. Survivor was something my best friend, freshman year of college, showed me because she had a TV in her dorm and we were hanging out one day, and she was like, "I gotta watch Survivor," and that's how I got into that. So that was well past living at home. And you would
But
think,
then you
because
were still hooked.
it's true, yeah. Well, and Big Brother's CBS too, so
Oh
you
yeah.
had every right to believe that because I'm a huge Big Brother junkie. But in terms of family shows, it's not CBS either.
That's definitely, yeah, that's interesting. Like, 'cause yeah, like that's based on like some reality shows.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kind of would have led me there. But there also is like a high, not the highest amount, but there's like a high amount of like cop mystery shows on there, like as well, especially with like NCIS and is that where CSI is? Like, I don't even remember anymore.
Uh, I couldn't tell you for the life of me. I can look it up. Yeah, I mean, CBS is a big channel for me now, and especially my best friend from high school is actually an editor, like a film editor for CBS. And she does the editing for one of their major weeknight dramas now.
That's
Not now,
awesome.
because it's we're in a quarantine, but when it's running, she does the editing for it, um, which is super cool. Very proud of her for that. We actually, she got a little like call it an Easter egg, I guess, into the season finale of one of the seasons of this show.
Hmm.
Um, so she and our other best friend in high school and I all collect rubber ducks. We started when we were in high school, and we were just like, there was a claw machine at the movie theater that gave rubber ducks, and it was play till you win. And so we just kept going and getting a bunch of ducks, and we'd give each other ducks for Christmas and birthdays and just because whatever. And all of a sudden, we had all amassed these like wild armies of rubber ducks. Um, you can ask Logan about it. The first time I showed him my rubber duck collection, he was so blown away. I'll never forget his reaction. He was just like flabbergasted. And he was like, I never knew this about, like, this peels back so many weird layers. But in the season finale of this show, one of the seasons of the show, they put a bunch of rubber ducks on one of the characters' desks, and they were like, "It's for Devin, because Devin's the duck girl." So yeah,
And and see, and then that's perfect because that's exactly like the kind of amazing thing like we're trying to uncover, like going through like the history of some of these older shows, or even I guess in that case some of the newer ones. Like we see
sure.
we got the scoop on that. I don't think anyone else knows that, right?
No, that was a secret because she sent us like footage before it aired. That was a couple seasons ago. So if anyone knows what show that is, tweet at us and I'll tell you if you're right.
Is that Scorpion the one that the Fast and the Furious guy does or did?
I don't know. That's not the show I'm talking about. I don't know what that show is actually.
So they got the CBS got the guy who did like the Fast and the Furious for some of them, and they were like, "Hey, make a TV show." So he made like a TV show about like a government group of like nerds that are all like different kinds of like specialties, and they just try to solve
Oh,
crimes.
that's kind of cool. Catherine McPhee's in it. I see. She can sing. That's
I
it.
don't think she ever sang in the episode I
Mm,
saw, but
she
that
could
could
though.
be come back later.
Wow. It looks like the type of thing I would watch. It was not that show though.
I thought, yeah, that was one of the first things that came to mind. But definitely, I guess if anyone out there listening knows, definitely tweet at us
Yeah,
and we
if
can
you've
see.
seen the duck episode.
So I guess I didn't have this one written down, and I don't think this one might connect home, but I'm just gonna, since we're on CBS, I'm just gonna bring it up. What about this Hawaii Five-O like revival,
I
like
did
the recent
watch
one?
that. I did
Yeah,
watch that for a couple seasons.
with Scott Conn, James Conn's son.
Hmm. Also with oh wait no, it was Scott Conn I was thinking of. I was thinking of a different show. But yeah, no, I really dug this show actually. I thought it was super cool, super intense. We love a tropical climate, um, and it stayed interesting, which I appreciated. Yeah, I watched it for a couple of seasons, I think.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's definitely like it means it must have been like pretty good then, or because I guess like even you're right there, it is like a pretty unique setting, and I only saw a few episodes, but I didn't think it was like that bad. Like I definitely, was interested.
yeah. Like I said, I mean, I really enjoyed it. If only because like I always like the concept of like the law, sort of, and that's kind of what Hawaii Five O was just like this dude who was a great soldier, and the governor of Hawaii's like, why don't you run a task force? And you kind of answer to the police technically, and like that was kind of it. Um, but it's pretty, it's engaging, and the overarching plot is really strong. I think it's well written, and it does a good job of including all of the major characters, even though it's obviously about the main character. Um, it did a good job, and it ended this year. Was the series
Oh, I didn't
finale
know
I
that.
read? Yeah, a
And I was
couple of
like, yeah,
months ago maybe.
I wonder, yeah, like I didn't even know that it went on that for that long, so I wonder how it kind of like wraps up because there from yeah, like what you said from what I remember there was like an overall story that sometimes they'd kind of step away from and then they'd kind of like circle back to, like every couple episodes or something like that, and I don't really remember the exact details though.
The this isn't. I mean, this isn't really spoilers. The main like plot at the beginning is that the main character is trying to find his father's murderer, and that's the whole like overarching plot of the show is finding out who it is and then figuring out like the whole chain of events and the connections and this and that. And as far as I know, that thread lasted to the series finale because I was reading like just like interviews with the cast and stuff like that. Even though I'd stopped watching, it's still for me interesting to read about. And that thread was still in the last season, which I guess is season 10 or 11, 10. So they did a good job of tying it all together and keeping it consistent and not just like trying to start something new at the end, as far as I know.
That's good because I mean that happens a lot with these where people just get replaced and new people show up and like random shit just happens. Like they always just try to like make it new by just shaking things up. So I mean I can definitely give them credit for doing an overall story after like 10 years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I don't. I mean, I don't know the full cast for every season, but I do know that at the very least, your two leads, which is I think Alex O'Loughlin and Scott Kahn, they're in all 10 seasons. So at the very least, they didn't trade out any of their main characters. Um, and even some of the like more minor leads are in it for 7 or 8 seasons before they switch out. So the show did a good job of keeping their cast together and keeping their plot intact.
And so then let me see. I guess that's the only other one I can think of off the top of my head for CBS. Uh, I guess since we'll go by network at this point, we'll kick it over to this would be ABC, I believe.
Mm,
Uh, I don't know if this will be it, but I don't I this just kind of got looped in because while I was thinking about this, I did remember the show that only had one season got canceled,
mm,
and this one I figured would be a stretch, but I was like, if you knew this one, this would just be great.
okay.
um like I feel like no one would has like seen this, but it had one season and it was on ABC and it was called Flash Forward.
Oh my god. I want you to know that I'm on IMDb right now looking up a show that I watched that had one season and I couldn't remember what channel it was on. I was trying to figure it out. And if you had said the one I was looking at, I would have just shit blood probably, but it's not. I don't think I watched Flash Forward.
I'm sad because like I guess I was close there, like we were in the same like ballpark.
You were,
But
and it was within a year because the show I was watching premiered in 2010. Um,
God,
but
now after I'll talk about Flash Forward for a sec, but then I want to guess like see if I can figure out what that is.
okay, I'll look up rather what it aired on because I don't remember. Um, something about. Oh, I remember the ads for this. Um, this was. Oh man, we're gonna really hit on some teenage jazz nostalgia here. But this was at the time my best friends and I, the one who works. Actually, they both work for CBS. Lucky bitches. But the two that my two high school best friends and we started a website in like late 2008, early 2009, but we ran a review site. We thought we were really cool. We got like advanced copies of books from authors and stuff. But we reviewed TV shows too. Uh, Pretty much all forms of media. And so we were very like we watched as much as we could and read as much as we could. But I never got into Flash Forward. But I do remember seeing the trailers and stuff like that and thinking about it at the very least. But
I like it was just another one that like I saw, and I think one of the problems with this one is from what I remember, it was on Fridays, and
mm,
like a Friday show at like 7 or 8 is just gonna get kind of screwed over, and
that's a killer. Yeah.
And also, like where we're talking about, like Las Vegas, that had like all these people you would know. This had no one that I even vaguely remember, so it must have just been, whoever.
Sure.
I don't. You have the IMDb. I don't know if I'm terribly insulting someone, but I just mean like this.
Um,
It's nobody that I remember.
it
Um,
looks like the main guy was Courtney B. Vance, who is famous depending on what you've watched, and then Joseph Fiennes, but he is mostly in classical stuff. So like he was in Shakespeare in Love. Um, Stuff of that nature was mostly his wheelhouse, I think. But
so
yeah.
this was just one I thought was interesting, because like it was just kind of like on in that same. I was in that same kind of like time period where you were, but where you were actually like being productive, I was just like stuck at home with nothing to do, and I was like, ah, this seems interesting.
Yeah. Productive is a strong word. It was definitely a way to fill our time, and we thought we were really cool. Uh, but
But like I mean I'm definitely with you. I think it would be awesome, especially like in that time period to be like, oh, you're getting like free stuff or like early stuff or access to things like that's definitely what you want.
it felt good. It was my first experience with writing online, I guess. And not only that, but like having people read it, and reading the comments was so fulfilling. Never read the comments, but at the time we were like, oh my god, people read it, they commented. So it was definitely really cool, and it was a great experience. And nobody was too mean to us, which is good because we were like 14. We were so young. But
And like but it was in that exact same time, and I know that this one never really took off, and it was just interesting to me because basically the whole show is based around it was solving a one giant mystery,
mm,
and sort of it was like it was solving the main character was trying to figure out this giant mystery, and he literally had one of those like cork boards with all the red strings in it, and like
ugh, love it.
as the episodes went by it literally was like picture whatever ticket, like it was developing, like he was trying to figure things out and like piece it together.
Mm,
And the whole thing that had happened was for like a minute or 90 seconds in one day everybody basically just like blacked out and had like a vision of the future of like the exact same moment like 2 years in the future.
oh, I don't know.
And like and then it's basically the show that's like the first episode, and then it's like, all right, well, what happens? And then he's trying to figure out like how did this happen.
Sure.
And it was basically they never resolved it because it got canceled after one season, but it was some kind of
Hmm.
like science experiment bullshit. It wasn't just like a natural phenomenon,
Oh, of course.
it wasn't like a spiritual thing, at least in what how they were kind of spinning it in, as he was trying to figure it out.
Mm,
But it was just interesting because like there were it had all those different like elements of it. Had the people everybody would talk about is just like a normal thing of like, oh, well, what did you see, or like what were you doing? And then it was all the different things of like people lying and then trying to like line up those stories. Some people didn't see anything, so they were like, oh, I'm gonna be dead by then, so then people just like went insane. And
oh
then
God.
some people saw like the one of the characters that the was like a side character. I remember her thing was like her drowning, so she was like, oh, like I'm dying in that moment. And then I think the last episode or what they were building towards was like time catches up, like it gets to that moment, like people have to then live out those moments, and it just kind of was like a really interesting premise to me, although I know it didn't stick for anyone else out there.
Sure. I mean, I think that's where a show like that has to end up, though, is like you have to show that moment. And it sounds like it would have been great as like not quite a mini series, but like something more self-contained. And if it didn't get there by the end of season one, I don't know how far can you drag that out, but it does sound super interesting. I was reading, I guess it's based on a book series.
That I didn't know, actually. That's interesting
This
because that means
for
I guess there is actually like an ending to that.
mm, Based on
But
the
because
novel Flash Forward by Robert J. Sawyer. It's from '99.
I think you kind of hit on something that's right, though, because I bet this would be done way better like today with like Netflix, where you're just like,
Mhm.
hey, we got 10
Mhm.
episodes, we're just trying to hit this out of the park. But with that, they were trying to go for like Lost 2.0, where they were like, we can get people in for like years to come back and
Yeah.
try to figure this out.
Sure. I never saw Lost.
Same, like I watched the last episode ironically enough because it was such a big deal at the time that it was airing. Like I watched it with people and I was like, okay, like it definitely the people who watched the show hated it, and then I it definitely did not hit home for me at all.
Mm,
I'm not gonna like spoil it or anything in particular, but I mean like it was just like when I guess when you just try to jump in on like the last moment of something.
yeah, I mean that makes sense.
But I guess in these days most people like wouldn't recommend it because I don't know if you've like heard, and I'm not gonna get into like details, but like it doesn't really like wrap up in a meaningful way. It just kind of like goes nowhere.
Yeah, I have definitely heard that. I think it's the curse of shows that maybe go on longer than they were imagined to. Is that like there's no clean ending and there's no satisfying ending, um, and so you end up kind of pleasing no one. I think you try to make this like grandiose reveal, and it's just like if a show goes on long enough, nothing you end it with is ever gonna live up to the stories that you've told in the middle. Uh,
Yeah,
I think it's important for any show to not that I'm a network exec, but if I was, it's important for any show to know when they have to end. And I think some of the best endings are shows where like they know it's their last season and they've planned for it, and so everything just like comes together. But like there's this sort of joy in it that you don't really see with those long-standing shows that sort of wrap up without warning or I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling about it, but
no, I'm definitely with you, but I mean it can be hard to just try to like wrap something up, or especially when it's been on for like a decade or just years and years and seasons,
and
especially
Lost was
when
prolific.
yeah, because that's what it was like. I remember at the time because like everybody wanted to watch it, and it was always a big deal of like, oh well, we gotta like watch, especially because this is like before all the streaming and stuff. So this was like, oh, I gotta watch it when it's on now, and like nobody can ruin
Mhm.
it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then even I knew somebody who would still record those on VHS because that's how awesome 2007 was.
Nice. Hell yeah.
I mean, I know it's a little bit late for recording things on VHS, but you know, you still use the tech you had from before.
Oh, sure.
Um, and so yeah, like I guess like I didn't think that one would really connect, but that was just one that kind of came up when I was just kind of going through these, and that was one that I was like, that show didn't get enough credit, even just on the premise alone. Like I thought it was like smart.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think if it's done well, it could be fantastic. So I might look
Yeah,
into
because
it.
I had never thought about that until you had kind of mentioned it, but I was like, yeah, if you took that and just did it again on like Netflix or anything else, like just did it again, you know, in a more modern context or like a different thought process, you could probably have a really awesome series.
Mhm.
And especially because one of the things that, like, again, never really got paid off, but like I remember, this is the last thing I'll go with about it, but there was like one character that like didn't have that happen, and then he got caught like on camera, and then that was one of the things like on the board is it's like this dude who was like up and moving around, and it's like who is this? Why is this guy not like forward in time? And he's the only guy in the entire world that didn't have that
Oh yeah.
happen. And it's like, and then that guy was like a side character, and but again, like it never really paid off. But he was kind of wrapped up in like the science angle of it, and somebody was like fucking with him or framing him.
Sure.
But yeah, like that was definitely something interesting. Um, that's most of what I guess I had, except for I know there's the one other big network, I guess, would be Fox. I don't know if this is gonna connect home, but I did put down two on here. This one was also like a really I wasn't gonna say really popular, but it wasn't. But this one was also on like Fridays, I believe, in that same exact time period. Pretty much where like I mean there's nothing else going on, so I was just seeing whatever the new shows that came out were. And this one had Colin Hanks in it. This was the called The Good Guys. I believe this also lasted for one season.
Hmm. I don't think I know it. Definitely don't know it.
It's just another cop show. And if I remember correctly, it's set in modern day, but it definitely has like a really 70s cop show like feeling, especially because like the guy he gets partnered up with is like the guy who's been on the force for like 30 years. So, but
Sure.
he still has the same car, the same mustache, like the same revolver. Like he's still like 70s cop show cop.
It's
And then
very classic.
yeah, yeah, but and I think that was something I thought was interesting is because from what I remember, I don't think it takes place in the 70s. I think it's just like that's like part of the aesthetic, but it's like modern day. But one of the other thing, the real thing that I remember about it being great is because Colin Hanks is this like obviously the fresh face to the force who gets partnered up with this guy, and like not only does he knock it out of the park, they really just have like a great dynamic while trying to like solve murders. But this one's definitely like all comedy. It's
Yeah,
not about like actually trying to solve murders. It's about these two basically getting in each other's way while trying to solve a murder.
sure. It's super interesting that you say that the performance is great because I don't know. I would never peg Colin Hanks for a cop show. I guess. I just thinking about him, I would never be like, yeah, he'd play a good cop. Like, no. But
I, I think that's totally fair, but I think that's almost like maybe why it works is because he is like fresh faced, like super happy guy, like just showed up and is like trying to do all this stuff by the book and even I guess even being like nice to criminals
sure.
and like all this stuff. And then he's paired with this guy who's constantly telling him to like shut up or like smacking him away, you know? And
Yeah,
it's like that balance between the two because he's not the cool cop, he's not like the best cop, he's not getting the most stuff done, but it's definitely just like a good comedic pairing to me at least.
that makes sense.
I went to that and I did skip over though, what was the show that you had mentioned, because I was trying to think of what it is, and so can you give me the details without the name again?
The show that I said was a one-off.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it was. Apparently, I looked it up. It was on NBC in
Okay, that's
summer of
good.
2010, which I do remember.
Hmm.
Uh, it only lasted one season. And it didn't really resolve itself, but basically, uh, seven people wake up in a town with no memory of how they got there, and they can't get out, and their every movement is watched. And then outside the town, it shows at least some of those people have people looking for them. So there are people outside of this town trying to solve this mystery of like how their people disappeared, which on the greater scale is like how these people disappeared. But inside the town, it becomes this like psychological test of like what people can endure and what they'll do and how they're pushed and stuff like that. And it's sort of these people trying to survive in this weird game they're being forced to be played.
Man, I don't know this one. It
Man, it was
sounds
so good.
interesting.
It
I
was
don't.
so good.
It sounds kind of familiar too, because I feel is it kind of like the perspective it's shot in is kind of like almost like Big Brother-ish, right? Because they're like monitoring them, or am I totally wrong about that?
Yes, parts of it are, and actually the media picture or whatever is a picture of a camera on the ceiling, looking like an eye. It's a good picture.
Y Yeah, because like that I feel like is, but I think it's similar to what you were saying with like Flash Forward. Like I think I saw the commercials. I don't think I ever watched the show though.
Yeah.
It was probably too spooky for me, really. It sounds spooky.
It was definitely chilling. It was something my friends and I watched together. Um, if I remember correctly, we gave it our end of the year award for most unjustly canceled TV show. But because we were super invested in it, and it didn't wrap itself up well. Like it was clearly leading towards something, and the last episode was clearly, it was pushing a season two that never happened, and so you don't really get any. There are no answers really. Just more questions. But it was a great show, and it had real potential. Um, and it ended.
Do you think we could like track down some of those writers or one of them and be like, "Hey, where were you going with this?"
Man,
Like,
I wish. Like I said, it was really interesting. It definitely was super dark at times, but it was this fascinating like it was such a diverse cast of people, not even the cast, but like the strangers, so to speak, that are in this town. And I know like one of them was. not a debutante, but one of them was like semi-famous and like in a I like Paris Hilton-ish. Like she was famous for kind of being a lush and having money, but obviously she goes missing, so people are looking for her. Um, and if I remember correctly, there's a journalist on the outside who like is putting the pieces together as the show runs on and is noticing like, oh, this person's also missing in this and this. Um, Chadwick Boseman was in it, which I had forgotten
That's
because at the
amazing.
time he was not as big a name as he is now. Um, it was a great show.
I can definitely believe that. I mean, especially because I guess a lot of the stuff we're talking about is kind of in that similar time, but it seems like there was a lot of like people trying to do interesting ideas or new things, but nobody was watching. Like that, I guess that was just the fate of TV.
I guess so. There
Unless
was a lot going on at the time, show
that
wise. So.
that's true, that's true. Especially because like I guess it seems like I guess it just seems like a lot of the shows that were really popular just kind of kept trucking on and just kind of had the mind share. Because all
Mhm.
those other shows that did go on had like 10 seasons, but all these just made it like one. So I guess it just took up like the time.
Yeah, not. I think at the time, not a lot of shows really got renewed, as far as I remember. Maybe I'm just making stuff up, but like it seemed like a 3 seasons max sort of time period. But
I mean, so one thing I definitely still want to see if you have like any other shows that you might want to bring up or that pitch to me or that I can see if I can think of.
mm,
But the one of the last one I had kind of stepping for going back to Fox, but stepping away from like a written show and like copper mystery theme. Well, this is still mystery themed actually. Um, this is something we've talked about a little bit before, but I wanted to bring up because it's one of the best reality shows ever. But this is The Mole. I believe
okay.
this was on Fox, right? I don't know if you remember differently.
I don't remember pretty much at all, but I'll look.
It's not like,
I forgot.
it doesn't. Go ahead.
I just forgot that Anderson Cooper like hosted it.
Fuck, you're right. I completely did not remember that. And yeah, you're definitely right about that.
Mhm.
And I feel like the network isn't super important, but I definitely just like trying to remember. And I think it was on there, but I might have been wrong because I definitely remember it was on the Game Show Network. I 100% remember that.
The Game Show Network was kind of a catch-all for like weird shows that
But
were
it was great.
reality-ish. Yeah, it's true. Just generally, that's what it was. But um, the Mole was on ABC apparently.
Okay, okay. So I think I actually, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like so this was one that I was never super fan of a lot of the other like reality shows, especially because during this time there was a ton, and then even the popular ones, like even I'm not even shitting on it or anything, but like Survivor, Amazing Race, or Big Brother, like every people that was always again like prime time viewing multiple
Mhm.
times a week for my family. But
Mhm.
that was just what I was just not ever super into.
Sure. It's not for
Amazing
everybody.
Race was pretty cool though. I was into that. That was a little bit more interesting for me with like travel and challenges. It was kind of like adult guts.
That's true. Yeah, I can see that.
And the one that I definitely did connect with though, that I believe got canceled after only like a few seasons, was The Mole. But it was definitely just interesting to me. I mean, the whole show is just built off of like a mystery. The entire season, like one uh, it's a reality show similar to ish to like Big Brother, where all these contestants are like brought together, but one of them is implanted as a mole, and if they make it to the end, they win, and everybody else loses. And
Mhm.
if they get voted out, everybody who's still remaining, basically, I believe, wins at that point, if I remember correctly.
I don't remember,
But
but I'm looking
basically,
it
the
up.
yeah, no, that's definitely probably good. I probably should have double checked the research a little bit more before, but I was just like, oh, I'll remember. Uh, in this case, though, like they at least were the main point was that like they were trying to, root out whoever was like working for the show and basically vote them out, and that's what like the entire premise was about.
Mhm.
And I was definitely super on board with that, especially because whatever the first season I watched with my family, I called it in the first episode. And I'm
Yes.
like so vindicated when you get to the last episode, and I'm pretty sure that guy never got voted out, and like nobody believed me. I'm pretty sure that guy won, and I was like, that guy's such a bad actor though. Like I was like, it's
Yeah.
been him the entire time.
Mm.
Because I don't know if you remember this, but at least from my perspective, like whoever they got to be the person was like not an actor. It was just somebody who they brought in and then like told like, okay, it's gonna be you. And
Mhm.
then they were like the worst at keeping it a secret because they were just so phony like the entire
Yep.
time.
It's always a real contestant. Which is, oh, I think that's entertaining though, because you're like, you see how well people react under pressure, and it's usually poorly.
Yeah, because I remember I believe there was also like challenges and stuff that had like benefits because they have to like spice it up and keep it entertaining.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I remembered like one of these is just one of these things I'll never forget is like this first episode is like they gather all these people together, they explain the premise of the show, all these people are on board, and then they're like, "Hey, come outside for a second," and they bring all these people outside, and they're like, "Hey, all the luggage, this is all the luggage that you brought with you. Like everybody got one suitcase or whatever," and then they just like set it on fire, and
Nice.
everybody freaks out except for that one guy. Like it was this old guy and he has like no reaction. Like he's super stone faced while like these girls are literally crying.
Yeah. That's
And I
hilarious.
was like, oh, I wonder who it is. Like this
Yeah.
dude who has like no reaction. And I guess the point where I had thought of that later is because later in the episode they reveal that that was not actually their stuff. That was just like they just bought like replica luggage and set it on fire, and they were like, "Here's your
Yeah.
stuff,"
No, of
and everybody was
course.
super excited. And I was like, again, this guy has like no reaction. Like he's clearly been aware of this the entire time. Like he's on
Mm.
the inside, just some old guy. And the shittiest thing is, I think he won. Like I don't know how anyone didn't notice it.
I think it's a lot of self-centeredness, maybe. It's a Big Brother did something similar in season 12. I don't know if that overlaps with the mole. It might. But they had a twist called the saboteur twist, and it was the same concept where like one person was the bad guy basically. Uh, and I just remember like she like the whole point was like the saboteur would secretly do pranks or whatever. They're like, oh, the saboteur locked the pantry, so now everyone has to eat like gruel or whatever. Uh, and they voted her out in the first week, not because they thought she was the saboteur, but it was like, I don't know, you're friends with this guy that's annoying and he is like immune, so we're just gonna target you. And she threw such a huge fit. Like, she was not subtle at all. She freaked out. They voted her out and they got the saboteur at week one. Like, CBS had to bring the twist back mid-season and like have America vote on who they wanted to be because it crashed and burned so quickly that they were like, "Oh fuck, this was like the main twist of the season and it's over in 1 week because this girl was so bad at laying low that she just like ruined the game." It was
No,
very funny.
I definitely remember that. And then because yeah, you're definitely right. Where I remember like then just later they were like, okay, so guess what the real twist is? We're gonna bring it back because it's the
Yeah.
last thing they'll expect. And
America
then
votes.
yeah, and then they're like, you vote who we're basically gonna like ask who's left to become the new one. And
Yep.
then whoever that person is totally takes it. But if I was that person, I totally would be like, no, thank you, and then just go back in the room and be like, hey guys, they want someone to be the new saboteur. Please, nobody take that. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, but the dude pulled it off. I mean, that was the thing. Like, I think he won like 20,000. It's Big Brother money is such like huge money. You can like jump in a pool for 10 grand or some weird shit. So, but I remember the dude took it and just had to survive as saboteur for like 2 or 3 weeks and won like a decent amount of money. And he didn't win the season, but he did get that. So I'm like, I don't know. If you're bribing me, I'd do it. You know?
oh yeah, because I mean, I definitely see why it's in like the benefit of the person to take that.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of leads me there towards like the next thing there, where so like you can feel free to talk go with any shows, but I guess if you wanted to go with Big Brother, like what were the highlights for shows or like moments on your end, or even just whatever you remember off the top of your head?
Man. My friends and I watched a few seasons together, and Big Brother's a commitment, okay? Like, it's 3 times a week. But it was in the
And if you
summer.
keep up with the live blogs or like the feed online,
It's true, but this was a little bit before then. Although I will say there was one summer, my friend Devin and I were like, we're gonna watch Australian Big Brother too. We're gonna try to keep up. Australian Big Brother is every single day. That shit is wild. We did not keep up with that.
it's
Just
too much for me.
oh my god, we were like, how do you watch this every night? But we did watch 3 times a week for American Big Brother. We would all get together at my friend's house. We'd all, camp out on the floor, on the couch, whatever, and just watch. We all had our favorites. Um, man, I remember we watched the super controversial season, so to speak. Um, don't remember which season it was, but there was one that, like, they were like, surprise, everyone's racist, and we didn't know beforehand, and it got like really, it got so bad, and like it was shocking. It was like watching a bunch of people forget they were on TV. And
Wasn't there a
just like,
fist fight at some point?
oh, probably a bunch, but not this season. No, this season was just like, and I hesitate to say it was like lowest common denominator because that implies that racism is universal, and it's not. But like intelligence wise, it was so stupid. Like it was racist and dumb also. Like I remember there was an Asian woman on the season, and the villains were just like, "Why don't you go cook some rice?" Like that's not even like I don't
It's
know.
like a bad 80s movie.
We're not even reaching for that. That's just like fucking kicking dirt. It was awful, and it got so bad that CBS started airing like a viewer discretion warning before Big Brother, and it was I forget the exact wording, but it was basically like the views expressed on the show are not the views that reflect CBS network. The show was started as a social experiment, and that's what it continues to be. And like viewer discretion is advised. It was wild. So that was an interesting one to watch for sure. Um, Probably the biggest season the biggest thing I remember was watching. I remember it was like 13 or 14. It was some season where they had a coaches twist, where like they brought back 4 legends of the game to coach the newbies, and
Yeah, no, I remember that too.
mm-hmm, and it was awesome. But like midway through, the coaches entered because that season there was a fight, and some dude like headbutted somebody and got immediately ejected, and it was so stupid. But then they were down too many people in the beginning of the summer, so they brought the coaches back in. And I remember that because it was the most contentious season. Because my friend Kylie and I got into a big, like, fight. Not a lasting one, mind you, but like, because she hated one of the players and I loved him. And we would like every time we would watch the show, we would get into a huge fight about the merits of this player and whether he was a good player or not. And it just like lasted all summer. We're like, we would be fine, we would be fine. And then Wednesday would hit and we would be like, well, what are you like? We would just start yelling and everyone else was like, please stop. We just want to watch the show. 3 days a week for the whole summer until the season ended, and it was like that's
And
still like it's still if you bring it up to this day, Kylie and I would be like, "You're fucking wrong. Like you're wrong."
well, it's like especially bad because I guess it comes back so frequently too. Like it's only off for like a day or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just back. Was that the were you did you was his name like Dr. Stu or something, or am I making something up?
It was Mike Boogie and Dr. Will.
Yeah, that was it. You're completely correct. Yeah.
Dude, I watch a lot of Big Brother. No, I liked Boogie.
Is
No,
that what it was about? Is that whose side you were on?
I'm a big Dan Giesling fan, and Kylie was not.
Yeah. Oh man, what do they call? Don't they call him Dick or something?
No, no, that's Evil Dick Donato. Man, I know too much about Big Brother. We gotta change the subject. This is embarrassing.
No,
Uh,
I mean I'm with you. I just don't remember the names. Like I remember all this though too.
yeah, no, no, no.
Um,
Dan won his season 11 maybe or season 10. He won his season. He like never had a vote cast against him. Ostensibly, he had the most successful alliance because he had like a 2-person alliance that made it to the final 2, and then he won. His was the season that had the old dude who was like in his 70s and made it to the final 3.
I don't remember that guy. I
It
might not have watched this season.
it was a gnarly season. Like it was real peak garbage television. But Dan won, and then he came back as a coach, and made it to the final 2. So technically, he's never been like evicted, so to speak. But yeah, I was a big Dan fan, and Kylie was not. Kylie liked one of the new guys, and she liked Mike Boogie, so that was sort of the point of contention for us for a whole summer.
No, that's definitely understandable, and I guess it's fun how you can almost like do that with like these people on the show, like rally behind them or stand for them. But I mean, clearly, I guess like you said, Dan must have played it the best. Like if he never got evicted or never had a vote cast against him, like
I
that he's the only person, I assume.
he is the only Big Brother player who's played twice and never technically been evicted. He didn't win twice, but he should have won that second season. And that is a rant that I have stored in the memory banks. There have been like repeat players, and they're like Janelle is a legendary repeat, Boogie's a legendary repeat, but none of them have made it to the finals twice. No one's won Big Brother twice at all. And
That's
Dan's the only
interesting.
person that's made the finals twice. It is interesting because there are a lot of like, Survivor has 2 repeat winners now since Winners at War just ended, and there's a lot of people who have like at least made the finals a couple times, and I think a lot of reality shows, repeat the same players. And Big Brother does bring back veterans, but they don't usually make it very far, which is interesting.
I think just based on the way the game is set up, and I mean, I guess this would happen with Survivor too, but it's like I feel like they just get targeted right out the gate, especially if you've won. Because on one hand, people are like, "You've won, you don't deserve to win again," and then
Mm-hmm.
on the other hand, they're like, "He's won, he's really good at this game. We need to get
Yep.
this guy out." Like you're kind of fucked on like all accounts.
Man, I agree. And I'm so glad you brought that up because that segues nicely into a show that I recently started watching.
Yeah, yeah, go
Uh,
for it.
it's called The Challenge. It's the most garbagey trash thing that I've watched recently, at least. Um, have you heard of it?
Yeah, this is on Netflix, right? Like I'm not super familiar.
No, 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 no. Um, no, that might be The Circle. No, The Challenge is on MTV, which
Oh, is this
means
the
it's
library thing?
no, no. Logan loves that show. I was talking about The Challenge, and Logan was like, "Oh, do you mean I don't even remember what it's called?" But he brought it up immediately. I was like, "No, dude. No. This show it has its origins in the Real World franchise, which is
Oh, is
such a
this
weird sentence.
yeah, because this is the is this the oh yes, no, I do know what this is. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So the challenge is like if Big Brother were played solely by the people who were contestants on the show American Gladiators. Like not the gladiators, but like the just roided out freaks who wanted to compete on American
Ye-
Gladiators, and they like yelled too much and just like took their shirt off a lot and just went crazy. That if that were the only people on Big Brother, then it would be the challenge, and it is wild. And so I watched fully the last season because it's on MTV, and I'm trying to catch up with this current season, which is airing now. And the challenge, pretty much all it does is bring back returning players. Like every season, there are 3 to 5 newbies ish, and then just a bunch of people who are like, yeah, I've been on the challenge 11 times. I'm like, holy shit, dude, what are you doing with your life? Like, there are people who, like, we've been in a feud on the challenge for 12 seasons. Oh my god! Oh my god! Like, that's so long! And it's been a great time. I've really been enjoying it. It's such mindless, dramatic garbage, and it's great. It's great. I really love it. So I'm trying to catch up so I can watch this season. But yeah, it's
My,
the one exception to the rule of like bringing back the newbie or bringing back veterans, their targets. No, in the challenge, all the veterans are like the newbies got to prove themselves, earn your stripes, show up or go home kind of thing, and they all go home immediately. And it's just like these same 5 people who are like, we are the best. It's so weird.
I know I definitely I love that like that angle to it because I definitely haven't watched it, but my sister was a fan of this show,
Hmm.
going back to like when it came out and would always watch it and I would always see it on. And it did remind me of like a more roided up weird Big
Uh
Brother. It
huh.
was almost
Yeah.
like if you threw in a little bit more Ninja Warrior into the Big Brother kind of scheme.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and it's it's cross drafts, so to speak. So like when the challenge originated, it was something about the real world. But as it's gone on, like when it brings in new people, it's pulling them from other reality shows. So there are people on the show that are like, I recognize some of them. I was like, oh, that dude was on Big Brother. Like they pull a lot of like at any given season of Big Brother, like the meatiest jock they pull to the challenge. And like there are a couple people from Survivor, Amazing Race, but then like some weird shit where they were like, yeah, this dude was on X on the beach. Now he's on this show. And you're like, what the fuck? Like what?
Th- this guy was a contestant on Next, and we got him.
Yeah, it is the weirdest. And then like it's recently gone international. So then they're like, this dude was on the British show Shipwrecked, and now he's here. Like they're just pulling people. Like this current season had a dude who competed on like like Israeli Ninja Warrior or something. Like he's an Israeli who was on Ninja Warrior, but I think the Israeli version. I know he was on like So You Think You Can Dance, and maybe Dancing with the Stars. I don't know. They're just pulling these random people. I'm like, where are you finding these people? How do you sign up for this show? It's crazy. It's
I
so
kind of want to.
interesting.
I kind of want to sign up, but I don't think they would take me. Like I'm clearly not notable enough.
Yeah, well, apparently you have to. The prerequisite is you have to be on some other reality show. So now I'm like, I'm just gonna be on Big Brother and work out a ton, and then try to get drafted for the challenge. It actually looks miserable. They do the weird. They're like, and for this physical challenge, lift a bus over your head. Whatever. I don't know. It's crazy.
That's the Sky High physical challenge where they just drop a car on top of you.
Dude, hell yeah. Sky has a great movie.
Um, I I definitely I'm happy the challenge is still growing though because it's something I have not thought about in a
Oh my
really long
god.
time.
It
Um,
is season 35 right now.
oh God, I believe
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's been going since 1998. So
That it has. That it
and
has.
like
It's old.
yeah, and my sister just like I remember her watching it all the time, and I think it is. I just think it is super funny that they just bring the same people back all the time. But even before you said that, I was like, I guarantee that those people have like nothing else besides this that they're trying to do or want to do. They're just like, yeah. When people ask, they're like, what do you do? They're just like, I just do the challenge.
It
Like
really
that's what I do.
it seems that way. And there were people on there were like, I quit my job for this show. I'm like, holy shit. Like,
That
you
happens
what?
on Big
You
Brother
what?
too, and that's the stupidest
Mhm.
thing ever.
People are wild in there. Like, I quit my job so I could maybe be on reality TV for more than 2 weeks. I'm like, Jesus. Like, I know you could win a lot of money, but you also might not win a lot of money. And really, the odds are good that you don't win a lot of money. So, I don't know. Keep your day job.
But there's like so many there's so many people that just think like no I'll be the one, I got this, like I'm gonna capture America's hearts, or they go the opposite way and they're like I'm gonna be a heel, everyone's gonna hate me, like it's gonna be great,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be famous.
Yep.
So that's almost what you want to do, like just be like cause not enough drama that like I guess like everyone's really trying to get you out, but you got to stir the pot enough that you keep the show interesting so they really try to rig it to keep you in.
Mhm. Yeah. Someone's got to be just that sweet spot of annoying.
Well, because like, and I'm not throwing shade at anyone over there and at that whole production of like Big Brother, a lot of these other shows. But when it's always like the person who's always causing shit is on the chopping block, like the immunity challenge always shows up. Some fucking bullshit like always comes in like randomly. So I'm always like, you have like you almost have like a shield if you're causing
Mm.
shit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. I really adore reality TV, even if it is semi-scripted. Like, I just think it's such a fun way to turn your brain off and just enjoy something silly. Um, and sometimes the heels are what make that. Is like, I love the drama of it all. So, I don't know. It gets me. It works for me.
No, definitely, because I don't even think it's like scripted. Because I definitely think there's just it, and I don't even mean this as like a bad comparison. It's just it is kind of just like wrestling almost. Like you're just trying to make an entertaining thing. So, you're kind of just going with the flow. And there's heel characters in that. Like, you need both sides. Like you need the
Oh, sure.
part that people root for and then the part that the people just like hate.
Mhm. That's true.
And then that's why they had to invite because they had Evil Dick and then they had to invite his daughter back or invite her to be a player if I remember.
Yeah, they were on the same season and they were estranged. This was like early 6 or 7 maybe. They hadn't talked in years, and they were the final two, and she won. And then they brought them back season 13, I think. They did like a double season because they brought back Jeff and Jordan and Brennan and Rachel, but they brought back Dick and Danny. And they were like, yeah, we haven't spoken since the Big Brother finale of the last time we were on the show. And they brought him back. It was entertaining. And then Dick had to leave early because he had HIV, which was such a weird revelation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it
Honestly,
was
yeah.
it was so like shocking because I remember because there was one of the seasons that my friends and I watched live. It was right in that sweet spot for us. And we were really excited to see Dick and Danny play. And then like 2 weeks in, Dick got a call basically, and he was like, "Oh, I have a family emergency, I have to leave," and he left. And of course, Danny's like, "Well, his family's my family, so like, what the fuck?" And they wouldn't tell her, and she was freaking out. And it came out later that he was like, the reason he left is because he got news that he had been diagnosed HIV positive. Um,
Yeah.
and it was really intense. And as far as I know, he's kind of become an advocate since then of like safety and wellness and like living with HIV and stuff like that. But it was wild because he was so seeing a character who's so like mean and tough and conniving and seeing him just kind of like shaken was a very weird experience. And then it didn't come out until weeks later. No one knew what was wrong with him or what had happened. So it was intense for a reality show. It was one of those few like sometimes you get really raw moments, and that was one of them.
Yeah, definitely. Because honestly, I didn't even know that like any of that, and I guess it's like
Let me
I'm
Google
good to
it.
hear that he kind of spun it in a positive way, but that is wild. Like what? Oh, I don't even mean this in a bad way, but like character development. Like he goes from being the guy who's known as like evil dick to like, no, I'm actually advocating for like this great cause. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, he was a great character. Even if he was like the bad guy, he was fantastic at what he was. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was like seeing the soft side of him. Like it was very humanizing, and it was just very. It was a good reminder that reality TV is real. And we forget that a lot because reality TV is so over the top and so staged, and everyone's like playing up the largest parts of their personality to be entertaining for the masses and stuff. And sometimes you need that like as dark as it is, you need that reminder that like these are real people that are living through real things, and this show's not the only thing that they live through. Um, yeah, it was rough. Oh, I guess Dick won. I thought his daughter did. Anyway, yeah. It was very sobering, I would say.
no, that's definitely fair because it is an interesting way to think about it that way, where even though it is like reality TV, that is almost like a way to break it, where you're like, oh wow, this actually is like reality. Like, it's not just like a game show or just, something like for fun necessarily.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, is there any final thoughts you have on that or anything else? Because I'd definitely be curious, like, if you had any other shows or any other things you'd want to bring up.
Um, I don't really think so. I would say when we were in high school, Devin and I made a pact that we were going to both apply to Big Brother once we turned 21. And this is a call out post because we haven't done it yet. Uh, because now being adults, Devin thinks she'd be bad at it, and I think that it would be perhaps anxiety inducing. Um, but we were gonna do it. We had a whole plan in place and stuff. So it was a dream of ours for a while, and having grown up now, I realize that it's not super attainable, and that not much of a segue, but I read an article about reality TV recently. And it was some MTV show that I didn't watch. It was before my time, and like it was about some girl who became reality famous, and she got a show that was like she's looking for a millionaire or whatever. She's trying to marry a rich dude. Really peak MTV garbage. And one of the dudes on the show, basically the producers rigged it so he would lose, and then he like went off and murdered a hooker.
Oh,
And the whole
Jesus.
it's I wish I could remember the specific. It's very dark. But the whole article was basically saying like reality TV can really warp you in a bad way. And there was an interview with a Big Brother contestant who quit like a couple weeks in. This was after I stopped, kind of fell off of it. But she was saying that like when she did the pregame interviews, they asked her if she was on any meds, and she told them she was on anti-anxiety meds, and the producer said, "Yeah, don't tell anybody that." So she didn't. So she didn't register her meds, and then when she went to the show, she didn't have them with her because they weren't registered, so she couldn't have them. And she had a mental breakdown in the middle of the show, and she had to quit. Um,
Jesus, yeah, I didn't know that
it's
either.
it's I did not. It's all very dark, but the whole idea of the article is basically that like you have to retain your humanity while being on these reality shows. And I think that's the main thing that I've learned as I grow up watching this stuff is like as fun as it is and all the drama and all the crazy competitions and the people and the personalities, like there's humanity in all of them, and sometimes that gets away from people. And I think it's important to remember that and to hold on to it because I don't know, it's just an important part of every person. And I think it provides context to a show that might otherwise be just kind of silly.
Yeah, no, I think it is definitely like an interesting thing to think about or even like look into, and especially like yeah, it can be mind breaking, I guess, or even shattering to just like see the other side of the curtain or those people who like work behind those walls and if they are doing some like shady things like that or terrible things, like it definitely is like a whole other aspect of it that you never really like think about.
Hmm.
The last thing I guess I would just want to cover before we leave here, I didn't guess it and I don't think we ever covered it. So was there like a network that hit home or was like a frequent? My other guess was USA, but I never watched much on there.
It was USA.
I knew it. I
Oh
knew
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. No, we that was my mom's channel really, and I watched a lot with her. So, she loved Burn Notice. That was one of her favorites. Um, we watched White Collar together. I watched Covert Affairs. We both watched Psych. My mom loved Monk. USA, particularly in its heyday, did a really good job of like the unique procedural cop show. And there are a bunch of winners in their list of shows. I think Monk is probably one of the biggest. I think NCIS is a USA show, or it aired on USA all the time, so that was a draw. For me, it was Psych. That was always my favorite show on that channel. It's one of my favorite shows to date. But yeah, we were a USA family. My mom and
That's
I were anyway.
that's totally understandable though, especially because I remembered we had talked about some of those shows in the past, and I think you're definitely right with especially in that period, and I assume maybe they still do, but they definitely did have like a high quantity of like pretty high quality like procedurals like that were all like really unique in their own way. And I remember like it was always one of those things where they were always like winning awards or like you'd see all the billboards they're like number one show on TV like Burn Notice, and I'd be like it's just something like I had never heard of because I had never watched that network.
Hmm.
But I'm just like all these shows that you had mentioned, I think it's interesting because now even that a lot of them have ended, there's I feel like they have a lot of them have had like a staying power, like with Psych and like I know my dad was a fan of like White Collar, I believe,
Hmm.
and like it's stuff that is still on and like replays and gets like a ton of views and has like mind share still.
Yeah, it's like I said, they were fairly prolific, especially in that time period, with unique cop shows that had really likable characters, or at least engaging characters. And in my opinion, they did it the best because it was most of what they did. USA sort of had a focus in that genre, as far as I could tell. And most networks have a range. They do mysteries and cop shows, but they also do comedies and sitcoms and reality stuff. And USA at the time was really pretty focused on this like procedural sort of um, setup, I guess, because stuff like White Collar and Covert Affairs weren't necessarily cop shows, but they followed the format, and they did a really really good job with them. And Psych is obviously like it was on my top 10 for the decade. It is one of the best shows that I've ever watched. So yeah, USA really crushed it, and that was the one. We had our DVR was always full of USA stuff that we would sit down and watch through during dinner.
And that's funny because that was the last thing I wrote on like my thing. I was just I didn't want to write out like a ton of shows, so I just wrote everything on USA. but like I don't have a ton of firsthand experience with that. So I kind of like cut it off at the end there, but I definitely was thinking like it must be that.
Mm.
But I'm glad we were able to kind of cover that or kind of dive into that. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about this random idea I had to just kind of go on some nostalgic shows and just talk about whatever.
Oh, of course. I love
Uh,
talking about shows, and it's fun to think back at like I don't know what I was watching back in the early tens or even the late aughts. Like it's a fun little flashback.
it is to me though, I guess, because at least especially because like it's so interesting to think about these shows that like I mean it had one season or you'd be like yeah remember this thing I watched that like never went anywhere or like that does anyone else remember this and like
Mm.
I don't want to be that guy on the comment section. I take that phrase back actually. Um, but it is just like it's like that spirit of I don't know why like I just kind of went down memory lane for starting with Las Vegas and then it was just a bunch of random things I had thought of and I just wanted to get your take and see what else came from that.
Sure. I mean,
um
I appreciate being included. It's a lot of fun.
oh yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure we can probably do it again someday because there's so many other shows out there. I wouldn't even mind seeing if like Logan wanted to sit in too, because when you kind of sparked another idea for me there when we were talking about that library show that like with the challenges, like
Yeah, he was Logan was just talking about it. He's gonna be so mad that I couldn't remember it, but I don't. So.
I can't remember the name. Definitely watched it way more than I should have. And but yeah, like if that's just another thing I think that might be fun to talk about because there's a bunch of other weird shows like that we might be able to all sit down and talk about one day. So I guess if if anyone out there listening enjoys this, then there might be another Patreon episode we can do in the future. I figured these are a little bit more laid back, so we could just chat about some looser things.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said,
Um,
if anyone knows the show with the ducks, tweet at us. Additionally, if anyone can guess the show that I was describing in the middle there, um, also tweet at us. I'll tell you if you're right. It's a great show. I recommend it. I don't think it's streaming on anything. I've been checking pretty much religiously, so I'll find it somewhere. But it's a great show if you can find it, and if you know the name of it. So tweet your
and,
guesses.
and you're Jazz underscore Foster, right?
Last time I checked.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, tweet at Jazz if you know if you want to take a guess at that, or if you know the Duck Show. I would also like to know,
Please tweet at me
definitely.
directly. Yeah.
I guess,
Um,
or you can tweet at the at that nerdy site account, or myself at irrelevant jokes.
mhm.
And yeah, and if I appreciate everybody out there who's taking a listen to this episode. Did you have any final thoughts, Jazz?
Uh, no, just that I'm glad we're starting to be allowed out. I'm worried about it. Wear your masks, kids. Wash your hands. Be safe. But enjoy the small freedoms that we're beginning to get responsibly, so that we can keep them.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is a wonderful point to end on here too, because I did mention this is the Patreon episode for this month, but this is actually we're in May 2020 right now. If you're
Boy, we
tuning in the
sure are.
future at some point,
Oh, we
um,
sure are.
we're still somewhere in the quarantine arc of this series, and we're just trying to see where that goes. The manga, I think we got off track on the manga, so somebody started writing some filler shit for us.
Yeah, it's a rough season for humanity, one could say.
But hopefully it circles back around. And if not, we'll still be here making content, so at least that'll hopefully keep us sane.
Mhm.
But yeah, I do appreciate you sitting down with me here tonight, Jazz, and I appreciate everybody listening out there. And be good to each other and stay nerdy.